Yo, what's going on, people? Welcome back to the channel. We have got a nice little quick ESL Pro League play-ins preview video, and I want to kickstart by talking about Pro League a little bit because new format I think is worth mentioning. We also got to do a little bit of fantasy towards the end too. Don't usually do it, but I feel like this is a good time to maybe pick a few players who I think could shine in this tournament. But without further ado, let's get in towards all of this, and we'll explain how Pro League is going to look. As you can see, we've got a beautiful little group Swiss to start off stage 1, and I say stage 1 for those who don't know. There's 2 stages here. The top 8 from stage 1 make it to stage 2, and as you can see, that's where Spirit, Vitality, Mongols, Mouse, Falcons, G2, Na'Vi, and Liquid are waiting. So could and should be very spicy, but we're going to do a separate video talking about that stage 2 in towards the playoffs itself. For now, we're going to focus in just on the play-ins. I thought it was a good time to do this as well because I jumped on this morning on the podcast with the boys, Yumi and King T, and we spoke about Pro League play-ins, and we gave our kind of underdogs, our favorites coming in towards the competition. I thought I'd run through all of them and how I think this is going to pan out. Now, of course, like I mentioned, it's top 8 that make it through. It's a Swiss stage, so I like this. I think Swiss could be actually very, very interesting in towards this tournament. I feel like it has the real potential to have a couple of upsets or a couple of teams who maybe, as we've seen in kind of previous majors, for example, or RMRs, may I say, where we've had you know, 2 very decent teams that are like 1 and 2, and then they've got to fight and beat each other and then stay alive, or a couple of teams that end up 2 and 2, and it's a real brawl to see who's that last team to qualify. So I'm really looking forward to it. These are the teams that, of course, are here. We've got the real, I think, big top 4 or 5 with Eternal Fire, Pain, Game Legion, Furia. I would then say alongside them, you got teams like 3D Max and Heroic, or in that like real upper echelon stint, the top 6 who I very much doubt they'll struggle here. Then though, it does start to get kind of spicy. We've got this middle of the pack, which you've got MIBR, Soar, FlyQuest, MAT. Some people would argue Linvision. I'm not, and I'll get into that in just a minute. And then we've got what I would see as the bottom of the pack, the teams I don't really think have too much of a chance. That are Linvision, Namiga, NRG, Tyloo, Housebets, and Mind Freak as well. And as you can see, we've got 3 Aussie teams here as well, which is, it's rare to have that many Australian teams here, but it could be kind of interesting. We've had some decent storylines in the past with some of these Aussie boys, but primarily, we're looking at FlyQuest, as we always do, as a side who I think, you know, could make it through and could contend. So if we're going to run through the Swiss stage of how I think things should go, right, let's go start with the 3-0s, the teams who I don't think are, you know, if all matches go well, and I haven't done, you know, we did the majors.im, that calculator to work out how matches are going to go. I haven't done that for this. I'm just going off pure vibes and feeling. And teams that I think should go 3-0, I would actually go Eternal Fire and probably Furia as my second. I know a lot of people will say Pain here, but I'll come to that in a second. Eternal Fire and Furia, starting with Eternal Fire, super, super strong team. I really like the addition of Jota. I think he's added so much to this roster, and he looks so comfortable in his roles. He was so important to Sangao last year, and I think they've been utilizing him very, very well. So Eternal Fire have been a really fun side to watch, and Torres is playing well. We're actually getting a lot more consistency at that top end from Woxic. It always felt like he had a high ceiling, but at times a bit of an inconsistent floor. Now it feels like that floor is being raised, and we're actually getting him much closer to his peaks now, which is good to see, right? I think it's kind of awesome. Fury on the other side, I think it's a sort of a similar vein for them, where I feel like at this level of competition, and that's what I want to specify, it's this level in particular for Furia, I don't think they're going to have too much of an issue. We've seen it in the past when we talk about like the America's RMRs, for example, right? When Furia play against a lot of sides that are beneath them, quote unquote, especially in terms of ranking, they don't normally struggle. And I think this is for me where I feel like Furia again should come in towards this. I mean, they should be able to dispatch basically anybody from, honestly, FlyQuest on in that bottom kind of section. And I don't think they're going to have to break too much of a sweat to do so as well. So that's why I want to put them 3-0. I feel like the 3-1s, I feel like Pain and Game Legion are a very good shout here. Only reason being I put kind of Pain and Game Legion. Game Legion, I feel like they can probably pick up a loss to one of either Eternal Fire, Pain, or Furia. They're not just quite that level, but I actually think they've been incredibly solid. The pickups of Rez in particular, you know, saving him from NIP. And as you can see as well, PR, which a lot of you know, now should know, but might not have coming in towards this year, came from Miles NXT, an Academy graduate, and Ash has worked wonders once again, right? It's just standard Ash stuff. He never seems to fail in that sense. Pain, for me, I've been a big Pain advocate for a while. I just think if you put Pain against Eternal Fire, I think it could be quite difficult. Eternal Fire actually looks super good at the moment. Pain against Furia, very good debate there. We're actually Pain, you could maybe even favor them a little bit. The only reason I really haven't put them here yet is because as much as I like the guy a lot, I'm just waiting to see a little bit more out of this man here, Davideus. I want to see Davideus step up a little bit more than what I've been seeing so far. I think NQZ's look really, really good. I think if you're doing comparatively between like Lux and Davideus, it's not quite been there just yet, but NQZ seems reformed since coming under Big Azera's tenureship, and Big Azera continues to prove himself as sort of the best IGL in Brazil. Actually, not even just Brazil, South America as a whole. So, been a really, really big fan of him. I maybe want to see a little bit more consistency out of Snow, but he plays quite hard roles. So I'm going to give him, honestly, the benefit of the doubt there. So that's why I'm going to put them 3-1. Teams that I think are pretty close to that, who also could go 3-1, I think it's Heroic. Heroic are a super scary side at the moment. I'm sure most of you would have caught, or at least seen the scoreline of them versus Astralis for the IEM Dallas spot, where they decimated them 2-0. I was casting it. Very, very fun watch. And they looked really cool. Tania has been lights out for this side. He's averaging like a 1.15 rating since he's joined the team within the last month and a half. He's looked super good. Xcloud looks incredible. Much better than he did on Sangao. In Sangao, he was good, but it felt like there was maybe bits of inconsistencies there. And it was also Jota doing a lot of the heavy lifting. But Xcloud looks incredible so far. I think the only really reservation that there is about Heroic, and it's not even that bad of a reservation, is that we just want more from Sampaio. Sampaio isn't doing bad by any means, but when you look at the tail end of Falcons, where he was actually a real shining light on a dead team, and any team before that as well for Sampaio, he was always incredibly confident, flashy. He had these super takeover maps. We haven't quite seen that. I think he's somewhere in the region of like a 1.06 rating since joining Heroic, which is, it's okay. It's not bad, but we know he has the ability to put up like, you know, a 1.1, 1.15, right? That is Sampaio's level. So I think it's maybe just getting him a little bit comfortable, but I think with Saw, you can always trust that Heroic are going to come in incredibly well drilled, very well prepped. Their anti-strats are excellent, as we saw against the Astralis side. So they're another team to me that if they were to go 3-0, 3-1, I actually wouldn't be surprised really at all. Then a little bit behind them, I'm going to put 3D Max, but I still think they'll make it through. I'm just not super convinced with 3D Max. I just think they're like, they've hit a plateau in a way. And I just think they're going to just try and coast and stay around this top 15 in any way they can, right? And for me, for 3D Max, I'm just not convinced. I just don't see them ever being a side that make a deep run. However, in this stage, of course, they don't need to make a deep run. All they need to do is qualify to the next stage 2, which I don't think they're going to really struggle with. They don't normally lose to teams that are considered worse to them. They just don't really scalp any big names that, for me, are kind of considerably impressive. I always feel like for 3D Max, they're an okay side. They get a few wins here and there. You're like, all right, that was decent, but are they going to make a deep run in the playoffs? Probably not. But are they going to make it through a group Swiss stage? Yeah, probably. And they actually could I don't think they go 3-0, but maybe like a 3-1 would be like, sure, fair enough. Then you've got this middle of the pack. You've got MIBR, Saw, FlyQuest, M80. Now, for me, the first team that I would actually probably lock in here would actually be M80. As much as that might sound as like a bit of a surprise. But I like M80. They're now playing back with Rec after he broke his leg and couldn't play for the start of the year, couldn't travel to Europe, because you normally can't fly after you have the sort of surgeries and stuff. So it makes a lot of sense, honestly. But this is a side that I really do like. I think Slacks has found a lot more form since coming in towards M80 compared to his previous German rosters like Alternate Attacks. I think Sin still regards himself as actually a really, really solid caller. Lake, super exciting. And I think one of the reasons why I want to put M80 as a team to make it through is actually because we're in a studio environment. There's no crowd here for this. And I feel like studio environments is actually where Lake does a lot of his best work. He's going to get loud. They're going to get fired up. And that's actually they're a really difficult side to play against when they do start to really feel that form. So for me, for that reason, I actually think M80 have got a really decent chance there. When they get the ball rolling, they're a very, very difficult team to stop. And probably alongside them, let's say like my top 8, the 8th team to round it out, I'm actually going to go FlyQuest there. And that might be a surprise as well, as I know a lot of people will probably be looking at MIBR, but I've really not been convinced with MIBR. The Lukowski edition still doesn't seem like it's clicking right now. There's been a lot of question marks. Biorenazan as well entering in towards this team. I don't know. That feels like a real lateral move for me. So I think in total, I'm not super convinced with MIBR. I think they might downward trend a little bit before they start to pick up form. I don't even know if this is the right 5 for them too. I'm just not convinced. Every time I watch MIBR, I feel like, you know, it's obviously like Insanity is incredible. Such a super talent. But The rest of the team do leave me wanting a little bit more at times. I think Safe has his moments as well. I'll give him some credit, but I feel like there is a lot of weight on the shoulders of Insani, and if he doesn't pop off, they do kind of struggle. So for that reason, I'm going to go FlyQuest there. As much as FlyQuest haven't done great so far, and don't get me wrong, I'll be the first to say it. I like this team, and I really like Regali as a player as well. They haven't been clicking. They've not picked up wins like at all. They've been on some really, really bad run of form. But what I'm hoping here is in a studio environment, they get a bit of comfortability. And I think slowly as time progresses for me for FlyQuest, they're going to start to pick up a little bit of form. Now, they're a side in a bit of a coin flip that I could also very easily see just go like, 2 and 3 and kind of, fail in their eyes and not make it to the next stage. And I do feel like, and this is something that we touched on the podcast, which is also worth checking out if you get a bit of free time. It's called Double Swing. That's by King T. It's worth going and check that one out. But we were touching on this in the podcast, and we were saying that if this tournament doesn't go well and we don't make it to stage 2, something's got to change, but not player-wise. I think it probably actually will be Urcast. It's probably the next kind of name on the chopping block a little bit, or bring in some sort of supporting element in terms of the staff, right? Whether it's a mental coach, some sort of performance coach. Now, FlyQuest are on a big organization, so I don't know how much of a possibility that is. And I think generally for them, the manager sort of does it all. But I don't know. These have been some really uninspiring performances so far this year. And I gave them the benefit of doubt of teething issues, new player in towards the team, and they can't really play scrims with Regali because they're in Oz while he's in Europe and yada yada. But ultimately, things have got to change and they've got to be quickly. So I'm going to give them benefit of doubt and say they can make it through so far, but you could very easily interchange that with MIBR, and I think it would be the same sort of worry, but they could squeak in. So I'm not convinced. I love Azuru, right? That's my guy. UK Counter-Strike on top, but I think it's just too early. There are Portuguese-speaking side changes to English for this tournament after a great run, it may be said, right? Previously in Cluj, right? But, Sure was actually a large part of that, and now he's gone. So you've got Azuru stepping in with C-Drop from Endpoint, of course, have folded. I think it is a tough sort of position to be in. Now, I'm not going to touch too much on the rest of these teams. I will just mention that Namiga, I think, are downward trending quite heavily and have been in Tier 2, but they can still be an awkward side to play against, so keep an eye out for some weird calls from Leah and maybe an odd side to play against, but I don't expect them to make it to the next stage. NRG, I've actually liked what I've seen from them in North America. I think they've actually looked quite consistent, so they could be a little bit of a spicy one. I'm not expecting big things, honestly, out of Tyloo at all. They seem like a bit of a dead team walking, especially losing Starry after the super team was built, and then they let him go, and it was Jam Young went to Valorant for like 10 days and failed his trial and then came back to CS. It's a mess, right, I think, for Tyloo, so I'm not really too worried about them. Limvision can be a little bit funky. I'm interested in what Call Me Sue's like on LAN as well. Of course, it's a player that a lot of the North Americans are sort of claiming a little bit, of course. He played in, I think it was some of the Fragadelphias and all of that kind of vibe, and he was playing in North American Counter-Strike for a while in that scene. That's a cool story. Zaka looks super, super sick. Being excited watching him. Starry is always a talent. I still always have belief that he can be an incredible sort of, next up sort of player. But whether that's going to happen, who knows? Unfortunately, the remaining two Aussie teams, I don't have too much faith in. So as we mentioned, it is top 8 spots go to stage 2, and the rest, bit of prize pool, but nothing too fantastic. Now, we have a bit of fantasy to bring you, and these are the players I've gone with. Caterato, xCloud, Inns, Kawes, and LNZ. Now, the first real question mark, and the main question mark in this team is actually Inns. Inns' performance so far this year have actually been really poor. They've been missing him so damn much, and they need a lot more out of him. But, and this is my however, I'm hoping that teething issues are out of the way. I'm banking on the fact that he can step up and rekindle that Inns flame as like the best Australian player, and actually a player who I genuinely feel like could play in like a top European team and actually not look too bad. Like at least one of those like tier 1.5 European teams and pull his own weight, right? So he's the only real question mark for me. But the rest of this team, I like. For the Linus pick, he's cheap, but also Heroic should do quite well, so I'm just giving him leader for that one. Kawes is crisp as all hell, and Payne should do well as well. So another one which feels like a very decent guarantee. xCloud, same thing, upward trending. Against Astralis, one of those maps is his highest rated map of all time in his HLTV playing career. So that was pretty sick, and hoping he can use that form heading in towards Pro League. And Kei Serato is Kei Serato. He's always guaranteed to do well, right? He'll do a lot of heavy lifting for Furia. They should make it through to the next stage, and they should do it at least with, you know, worst case scenario, like 1 loss, right? But they actually have the opportunity, in my eyes, to actually go flawless here. So for that reason, I'm bringing in Kei Serato for, you know, the real heavy fragging. But I honestly think this is a pretty, if the players play to the level that we know they can, Kei Serato, Xflow, Kawez all can put up numbers and recently have. And Inns has, in towards last year, was an incredible rifler and was able to do it at tier 1. And because a lot of these teams are lesser, quote unquote, than FlyQuest, I generally think Inns can rekindle the flame a little bit against some sort of weaker opponent, rebuild that confidence, get back into his form. So I'm taking the gamble on Inns in this one, but ultimately, that is my little Pro League preview for the play-ins. You're going to want to check it out. Starting on Saturday, you might see a special guest there as well. Who knows? But either way, it's going to be a very, very exciting event. I'm looking forward to it as well, and hopefully the fantasy goes well too. I don't do it all too often, but when I do, it's pretty fun. So, you know how it is. Thank you for joining. All of the good stuff. Make sure to like, subscribe. You know how it is. I'll be back for the Stage 2 and into playoffs as well, doing a little video talking about that. But for now, take care, and I will see you soon. Peace.